Hey out there, YouTube land. Is Kuda Slayer, aka Daytime Number the Beast, once again. Unfortunately, it's about 3:30 in the morning here on Christmas Day, and for no apparent reason, I seem to be having some kind of insomnia. And so, to try to make use of this sudden block of time I have on my hands and try to be productive, I decided to record an episode to, kind of keep my promise of making this channel be more active, and also at the same time I decided to kind of tackle a subject I've been kind of hesitant about discussing for quite some time. And if you haven't kind of guessed by now, with all the swag and everything I got on, I'm going to be talking about Gundam as a franchise, and how to kind of convert it into game mechanics for Mekton Zeta. Again, I'm sorry for being kind of not in the best state of mind, and it's kind of one of the reasons why I have kind of doing more of an informal presentation than I normally try to do when discuss similar subjects for application to Mekton Zeta. First off, this graphic here is just kind of a silly joke I thought of while putting this together. The clue is it's a song that normally is sung about this time of year. You still haven't get it, maybe I'll leave a comment down below and try to explain it. Or if you do get it, maybe leave a comment, saying haha or whatever. But anyway, Gundam, yes. Gundam is kind of one of the most prominent, if not the excuse me, I'm sorry, prominent franchises in the world of anime. Originally started in 1979, and kind of really was one of the series that really wasn't kind of expected to do much, but through its own quality of story and perseverance, it's grew to what it is, 40 years plus later, to what it is today. Basically, I would have kind of described it almost to the same kind of Cinderella story as the Final Fantasy game franchise. Originally, Gundam was just going to be a kind of a final hurrah for an animation studio to basically secure funding so that they could kind of go bankrupt with dignity and still keep the lights on while everything gets closed down and everybody's able to go in their own separate ways. But the original series started in April 1979 and was eventually canceled in September 1980. And when it went into syndication sometime later, that's where it really grew in popularity and started its long road to being as prominent and such it is today. Let's see. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. Joyce insomnia. Yeah, but like I said, it's quite yeah. In 1989, just to give you an idea of how much it grew in a short period of time, in 1989 there was a statistic of that there was at least one plastic Gundam model these are supposing just the numbers on models. These are the self-assembled kits and such. There's one model kit for every man, woman, and child in Japan, and that was in 1989. I don't even know what the stat could be today. It could be even as much as the population of the United States is right now. I haven't found a source, current source for that, but so let that wander for now. Let's see, in the 40 years that Gundam has been around, it originally started with the what's called the Universal Century Timeline story, and eventually about like 90, 92, it started splitting off into kind of other multiverses that I think there's as many as 5 or more right now since the first one came around, which was G-Fighter in 90, 92, something like that. But there's then followed by Wing. Let's see, Age was about 5 years ago. It has been quite a few. But for simplicity's sake, and since it's been the most kind of more successful on ongoing storylines, I'm going to stick with mostly Universal Century storyline. Let's see. If you've been an anime fan for all this time, and excuse me. If you've been an anime and or a Mecha fan for all this time, at some point you can be exposed to Gundam. I'm sorry. And if you somehow have not been exposed to Gundam, then that's a major feat in of itself. The Universal Century Timeline basically is at some point in I lost my little sheet. I had all the dates written down, but sometime in the far future, from 1979, mankind expands out into space to these artificial space colonies to alleviate the pressure on the planet from overpopulation, which is 1979 is when some years after the book The Population Bomb was released, and a lot of the start so a lot of the environmental movements that started in the 60s started ramping up about that time, and in that storyline, basically about 60, 80 years later, one of the colony groups of people that were forced to leave the planet decided they're going to declare their independence from the Earth government and attempt their own version of self-rule. Eventually, to achieve this, they declare war on the planet and bring their war machines down to take the fight to them and basically establish themselves as a force to be reckoned with. Let's see. That's kind of the general gist of the show. Kind of one of the good things about Gundam is that there are a lot of resources to use. There's about at least 3 or 4 different types of wikia that are in existence right now. There are countless books, most of them in Japanese, but a lot of them have been translated by fans. There's a whole load of manga and animated shows that have been released over the last several years. There's even been one live-action movie, and there's another live-action movie in production as of 2020, if I'm not mistaken. Um, let's see. That's kind of the general gist of it. If you really want to kind of start delving into the mire that is Gundam lore, I would recommend starting with the Gundam Origin series and Gundam Thunderbolt, which are kind of two good shows. I kind of like them because they sort of tackle some of the issues that the earlier shows kind of had trouble with, which I'll be going into in a minute. But there's a huge healthy body of lore that you can use, and also unfortunately it's kind of is an obstacle against you because of reasons which I'll be discussing here in a second. Again, I'm sorry, I'm not exactly running on full cylinders here. Let's see. First off, you kind of have to, when you're a game master in a mecha-related or based role-playing system like Mekton Zeta, at some point you're going to be asked to run a game or a setting based on Gundam, and you're going to, as a game master, you're going to encounter a lot of problems because of the reasons I'm about to go into. First off, Gundam is often described as the genesis of the real robot genre. Basically, kind of put it simply, the previous shows, they may slap on a bizarre sounding exotic name on a particular system, be a weapon, power, motive, or whatever, and leave it at that. In Gundam, they assigned a lot of numbers to different things, like power output for engines, weapons, thrust, acceleration, armor in some cases, a lot of technical details which normally wouldn't be expected from a show of like this. And I mean, this was pretty novel for a kid's show at the time. That was basically designed to sell toys. The obstacle that you will come across is when you'll try to sit down with all these different resources like the wikis and tech books and such, you'll start realizing that none of these numbers really make any sense or correlate to what you may see on the screen. There was Right. There's a really good video by BooFire191 called Gundam Mobile Suits Stats Are Magical Nonsense, and I tried to find the spreadsheet that he used for this, but I couldn't. All the sources I found have been deleted some time ago. But basically, kind of the example. One of the worst regarded combat units, the ball fighter, which is basically a kind of extraction pod that had some armor, some extra thrusters, and a gun slapped on it to kind of make it minimally useful in combat, mostly from being in large numbers, and comparing that to the main trooper of the quote-unquote bad guys, the Zaku Mach 1s and 2s, and the first thing that comes out is that for some odd reason the ball fighter, which is referred to as a mobile coffin, actually has almost twice as much thrust as the Zaku 1 Mark 2, and And this becomes even worse when you start going down into later series in the same timeline, like in Zeta and Double Zeta, and it gets even worse when you get up to Gundam Unicorn, or in Victory Gundam. That's about 1,600 years later, but the numbers don't really make much sense. I mean, they're cool sounding and everything, but when you actually try to, turn these things into mechanics for using rules and try to be coherent, you start realizing you're just tempting madness in general. You try to make sense of it all. Basically, yeah, one of the reasons why I was real hesitant about talking about this show is that a lot of the work that went into my Noah project, I would use in a similar Gundam storyline as well, and I really didn't want to repeat myself, but kind of the way I see it, I really don't see any way around it. So basically, kind of my answer to this particular problem is basically pick a particular stock unit, like the Zaku, or even the ball fighter itself. I would start with the Zaku, and just build it as the main line, basically the beginning line of what you expect to other units to be compared to, either be above or below it, and just kind of base those stats. Don't try to beat your head against the wall. Try to actually take the given lower stats and turn them into mechanics. Just pick your own numbers and use those as the mechanics to build the other units, and just kind of use that base unit as the measuring stick. And let's see, another problem is this Gundam was set up, originally created as an entertainment bus, so it was designed to sell toys, and so you often encounter problems with realizing exactly just how many units and machines, spaceships and such, are even involved in this show, even in the very first series. And because it is a kind of a recurring joke in some discussion groups I'm part of, where I always kind of make the joke of what insanity you start going into when you're sitting there watching watch as much Gundam as you can. You write down, okay, I need to make this unit, this unit, this unit, that variant, that other variant, yet another variant, and a whole other unit there, and that. What have I got myself into? So, and it's kind of in general, we start kind of realizing when you're begin on this rabbit hole. My suggestion is kind of really decide what is important and give that priority. It's like, decide what basic trooper, what are you going to throw at the protagonist or your players in this setting, and then just give stats onto what you actually need. Spaceships are generally just kind of almost most of the time window dressing. You don't kind of really need to keep track of every ship that's involved, because even in some of the battles in Gundam, you often can have as many as 100 or more spaceships at one time, any given time, and countless more mobile suits. So kind of just, decide what units are actually important, and if there's like another mobile suit, and that's going to be, say, a quote-unquote variant of another society, because in many cases, some of the lore in these units, like the various Zakus, there's not really much difference between the two that really would matter. And so, just kind of, you use the same stats for all these other, D, G, E, F, and whatnot, and only just give stats to when there's something that's going to make an actual difference. Like even the Zaku and the Rickdom, the Rickdom are fairly similar. The Rickdom is going to have kind of different armor in some places, and more thrusters depending on which version it is. So, only worry about instances of that. Spaceships, basically there's going to be big dumb objects that your players are going to shoot at or interact with it in one form or another. So I wouldn't really fully stat them out. I'll just give them just enough stats to, depending on how they interact with them, you kind of know what the end result's going to be. Let's see. That basically would save you, from my experience, it would save you a lot of trouble. One other problem I've seen, especially when you watch from the early shows, is the sense of scale. It's kind of one thing I've noticed. It's only been an issue that's really been kind of covered or made up for in the more recent animes. Is we talk about a human population that's just exploding and overpowering the Earth with its presence, and then send out these colony groups. Generally what's depicted in the anime, especially the early episodes, you don't really get a sense of scale on how many colonies there actually are, or how many actually people died during the initial outbreak of war. That's and part of that is because of low production value, low staff, whatnot. That they just made a lot of what they did with the original early shows is they just made do with what funding they had and what resources were available. And so that's always kind of a something that can sort of get lost on people if you don't just kind of sit back and actually look at it. It's like the Xeon colony group is supposed to be one of the most heavily populated ones, but a lot of you may not see that many colonies in like one shot of the territory, or they may be clumped together kind of oddly or whatever, and then they go over to this other colony group like Site 6, and there's only like one colony cylinder there, and like, okay, I thought there was a population bomb exploding here, and you got a whole bunch over here, but you only got one over here, and it doesn't really make much sense to me. And then the other problem with scale is trying to decide what units are going to be what scale. And the mobile suits, of course, would be scale 1. General small spaceships and larger and mobile armors, I would make a scale 10, just kind of for kind of practicality purposes. And then spaceships, I would make at least a scale 100. And then let's see. One of the other problems, this is kind of a big tar ball that's kind of hard to get your hands on and not be drawn in, is the nature of the weapons and offensive and defensive systems that these units all use. Again, if somehow you don't know any lore about a Gundam, one of the MacGuffinites or gimmicks that makes these giant robots possible is the discovery of the Minovsky particle, which was kind of a side effect of their clean fusion power system they developed early in the show to kind of replace fossil fuels and whatnot. And these particles are basically have a strange property of where they absorb radio waves, distort light, infrared beams, microwaves and such. Eventually these things are all kind of weaponized. The first thing they're weaponized as is to disrupt communications and sensors. This is sometimes it's kind of hard to wrap your head around, because it's not, even though it's kind of described as I did, but it's not really given much detail exactly how fully it works, because these Minovsky particles are part of the fusion power plants that everything like the mobile suits the ships use, but they don't exactly tell how they just work. They don't exactly tell how they're actually applied. Kind of one source I found for this is interesting, was this bulletin board discussion, and this is kind of how I set forth and described everything for as a game mechanic for my NOAA setting. Basically, and I'll try to have a link down below in the comments for people who can follow this themselves. Basically, the end result after reading all this is what I took was the ECM rules and change them and set so that they're not connected to the sensors of the unit in question, but they're actually connected to the power plant, because the ECM is part of the effect of the Minovsky particles when they're released from the containment field and allowed to spread out. Basically, I would use I would break it down into 3 different ECMs. You have your radar, sensors, and then missiles. And then for each level, I would have a different set value and then a different radius to kind of that reflect on how the particles spread out and how they achieve density in the free space. Like for example, the main, if I remember right, I'm kind of running on fumes here. The main starting ECM I would go with is the sensors, and I would set to level 4, and then give it a radius of 4 or 5, and then next ECM, I would set it to say like level 3, maybe even 2, and give it a radius of maybe 6 or 8. And then, and these numbers are for like say like a mobile suit. In the last one, I would use the missile, and I would kind of give like a 1 or a 2 value, and then just give that as wide of a radius as I could think of. It's like if 8, I might give it a 10 or maybe even 12. You kind of want to balance these out, kind of for game play fairness, and also kind of to sort of reflect, because from when these systems are being used, from an radar operator's perspective, they'll can see the microwaves coming from their radar systems, and then just seeing these kind of dark areas or shadows on the screens, which where there's no return, and you can't really tell what's there, but you sort of can imply, which sometimes you hear operators kind of saying target approaching, judging by size of the Minovsky particles density. It's either a ship or maybe a mobile suit or something else. The beam weapons that are used, which is another refinement of the Minovsky particles. The beam weapons are kind of one of the reasons why. One of the kind of ways I heard people describe Gundam is it's kind of a lot of the combats, because of the technology and the weaponized Minovsky particles, they're more akin towards the dogfighting that was existent in World War II. I would kind of agree and disagree with that, because I kind of see it more as kind of World War I, Spad and Folkers fighting each other out with tactical nukes. Basically, these mobile suits are, well, especially when the titular Gundam comes out, which is supposed to be the new trend setter for what is expected of technology, because previous mobile suits, their power plants couldn't power beam weapons, but the Federation, when they built and designed the Gundam, it has a beam cannon as its main weapon, which is basically a miniaturized ship cannon, and so basically its big claim to fame is that it's mobile and it has higher speed, yet somehow it can pack the same power as a ship weapon. So that's kind of why I describe it as like Spad and Folkers fighting over tech nukes. To kind of do reflect this mindset that I have for it, basically when you keep beam weapons, it's kind of fairly rare for small units, and basically use the mega beam option a lot, and if there's like a mega beam cannon on anything like a mobile armor, spaceship, or a mobile suit, I would design it as kind of a scale 10 weapon, and here's kind of part of the madness, the reasoning behind the madness on that. As I talk about these biplane type units, they're primitive and the technology is not fully developed, but they're just, these are all new concepts that are being put into use without any real time of have come with something better. I sort of see a mobile suit getting hit by a beam cannon, sort of as a kind of get like a fly getting hit by a fire hose. In comparison to a starship or a spaceship, a mobile suit's not going to have so much area, surface area, and so all that energy is being pumped in its general direction. It's not going to be absorbed by it, and so there's still kind of the possibility that you'll take damage all around, all over its surface and such, but there's still a possibility it could still survive. And so that's kind of a mechanic I put in to not make it so much one shot, roll up a new character problem for your setting. And then when the beam cannon, and like I said, I would use this for the mega beam cannons, for your unit design, designed to scale 10 and give it mega beam. If it were to hit, say, a starship, spaceship, that one section with the mega beam would take all like 10 times the damage all in that one section. So that's, to me, that kind of reflects on what you see in the with the mega beam weapons, especially like in the one kind of example that comes to mind is in Stardust Memories near the end. I think it's when the Gerber Tetra is fighting against the GP1 or GP3, and they're using mega beam weapons against each other. Let's see. It's kind of the another thing that kind of pops up, and it's kind of really hard to kind of wrap your head around, is the another thing that's going on in the Universal Century storyline of these people who are supposed to represent the next level of evolution, human, human development, with so-called new types. Even though when you watch a show, they kind of look like psychics and such. All the background information kind of that kind of describes them as not being so much psychic, but they're kind of just using some higher level of ability, which is not psychic. And there's a kind of a hard way of making sense of that. In many ways, it's kind of more of a Das Machia kind of thing in settings. When a character uses a new type of ability, it sort of just does whatever's needed for that time. So it's kind of really hard to describe. Let's see. Let's see. That's kind of some of the things I would do for a Gundam setting. Here's a source I kind of totally forgot about while rambling on here. There's one of the people that's been involved with Mekton Zeta is Benjamin Wright. If you've read any of the books, you probably see his name pop up, and no, it pops up quite a lot in the Bubblegum Crisis books. But if you're part of the Mekton Zeta mailing list, you'll see his name an awful lot. And in one of the Gundam fandom wikis, he kind of does present some of his things. Even though I kind of covered a lot of these things, I'm trying to walk through here with you. Again, I'll have a link down below for so you can read it at your own leisure yourself. But as much as I respect Benjamin Wright, I kind of disagree with some of these suggested rules. Supposing this is kind of a shorthand version of the Gundam Seiki, which was supposed to have been released years ago, but for whatever reasons, never really was released here stateside. Let's see, tech level. Kind of one thing I do agree with him is the Mecha combat skills. Basically try to combine all the required 5 skills into just basically 3. You have gunnery, melee, and piloting instead of gunnery, missile, melee, and piloting. And I'm drawing a blank now what the 5th one was. But see, the optional rules, I really kind of disagree with some of these. Anime leap, I would allow in like 0G settings only. Stats above 10. I kind of agree with that. Travel time for weapons. In Gundam, it's not really used too often, but in my NOAA settings, speed kind of plays a pretty big role in some things. So I kind of am hesitant, kind of split on that. But G factor, of course, that would be required, and that's where, if you're curious, that's where the G and G factor comes from. The extra actions, this is, I really have a big problem with this because I don't see how you have Gundam without the pilots if they can't have more actions. They do the things that you see on screen. I have a real hard time with that. Fuel is almost more of a headache to follow than it's kind of, you may only need to worry about it when it should be serious, like if it's going to add tension or something. Otherwise, it should be a detail you may not even want to waste time on. Let's activate. That's going to be again with the multiple actions. I would disagree with that, or for not being used. I would definitely wholeheartedly suggest let's activate, be put into effect. Missile priming, I can go either way on that. That's in the that was in the Mekton Zeta game shield errata as a action option. Let's see, stat generation, pretty straightforward. Psionics, it's kind of interesting what he suggests to use right here. This is kind of sort of a little bit of expanded version of the psionics system that was originally in the Mekton Empires book before the Mekton Zeta edition came out. It kind of, without actually going to super special effects, it kind of does describe what new types can do. It makes it kind of fairly straightforward. Some of the side effects here, I kind of agree and disagree on some points. The exclusion of pyrokinesis, telekinesis, levitation, and whatnot. Some of these powers, it could be argued you could sort of see some of them being used in Gundam, but they're not really acknowledged as such. So I mean, this is more up to your interpretation, depending on how you see what new types can and cannot do. One suggestion I would kind of make is combining telekinesis with levitation. I sort of see as being the same power but applied differently. Let's see. Here you get into problems with taking the lower stats and turning them into game mechanics. I have I really kind of see a lot of problems with dealing with that. What he kind of takes a little bit of a simpler version of look at weapons. I would some ways I would kind of disagree with that, but you know, I would still recommend you read them, if you know, just to kind of open your mind and give you some other options to look at things. And of course, Prohibited Systems. Even though Gundam has a lot of advanced things depicted in it, there are some things that you just never see. Energy absorbers, you don't really see it except sort of semi-implied in Gundam Seed, although that's kind of open to interpretation there. Disruptor, melee weapons, and ammo, since technically there's not really force fields per se. Again, that's going to be open to interpretation. Let's see. Gravity lenses and magnetic resonance. Yeah, I can sort of see why you may not want that. ECM, ECCM, I kind of explained earlier. The one thing I did forget about while discussing Minovsky particles, little rambling there, I would keep the ECM systems separate and linked to the power plant, while I would keep the ECCMs as a kind of a hardening to as a defense against, so that technically, no matter how high the ranking is for the ECM, the ECCM could at least try to help protect the unit from suffering from the effect of their sensors being considered destroyed, being within the area while they're in that area effect. Movable energy pools, yeah, that can be maybe later on when systems have, oh yeah, it's something else I gotta remember. That's when you finish your campaign, you're kind of advancing on in a timeline. You may want to visit that later, but in the main beginning universal timeline, that's definitely something you wouldn't want to deal with. Reactor shields, kind of, yeah. Remote control, that kind of depends on how you view your new types, and that's up, that's up to the game master to decide themselves. Gravitatics, I would almost sort of recommend not using that, but in some ways you can sort of use a combination of the thruster and grabs sort of to simplify your fuel use. Like there's kind of like a low power thruster set that you can just glide on, while the additional thrusters can be like the afterburner or whatever to kind of make you go faster, and such. You actually use more fuel. That'd be kind of one way to add dynamics and get around the fuel usage rules. Controls are that kind of self-explanatory. Internal automation. I would kind of argue that internal automation is kind of one of the things that makes the mobile suits actual functional, because they talk about the I'm drawing a complete blank on the name. There's a special control system in the mobile suits that tries to use the lower, says the third Newton's third law, to try to make the mobile suit be able to be more maneuverable and do things with like expending fuel. It's like oftentimes there'll be other limbs or features so that they can shift their weight around so that they can turn faster and whatnot. And one of the things I would use was the internal automation system, sort of as a second co-pilot to the main pilot. Because sometimes you'll see mobile suits like walking on their own, like I think it's like the second to last or very last episode of 8th Squadron. You'll see one of the Xeon pilots walking out of the hangar right next side of his Golf, which is walking on its own, and I would have internal automation system to kind of reflect that, and basically kind of give it some basic abilities like piloting, awareness, and maybe a tech ability, so that it could provide information on enemy units, or give, maintain itself when it takes damage. Cloaking stealth, yeah, I would definitely, since you don't really see that much in Universal Sentry, I wouldn't really have that. Shadow imagers, you don't really see it too much in Universal Sentry. The only time I could really think of would be in F91, which is the main hero mech in that story or movie, is taking spin and kind of moving so fast and generating so much heat, it's actually shedding paint and creating these sort of false doppelganger images as it moves about. That could be called a shadow imager if you really want to get if you really want to get pedantic about it. Esper lenses and thought control. This is kind of really depends on how you view your new types and how you really want them to be limited, or what they're going to require to be actually used. I have my own rules I had set up from my NOAA book. I kind of frequently refer to in discussions. Because I kind of take the Esper lens and thought control, I got combine them together and just do one system to replicate the same effects but at different newer levels and such. Again, that's going to be up to you. You may even want to consider using a different interpretation of thought control or Esper systems. Again, the original Mekton Empire book might be a source you want to look at, kind of decide on your own what you want to do. Techno-organics, light speed, self-explanatory. Teleportation, even though there's been teleportation seen, that's kind of more of a Des Machina kind of thing when used. Transformables, you see a lot in the later series, especially like in Zeta and Double Zeta. Supermetrics are kind of, that's going to be up to the game master themselves, but probably more likely supermetric tricks can be ignored. And of course scaling, which I already covered. Anyway, that's I'm sorry for rambling, but that's kind of all my thoughts on what I would recommend for doing. I'm pretty sure if I get some rest and actually look back on this, I'm going to probably regret everything I said, but this is kind of would be my recommendations on what you can do. But there's no point in trying to reinvent the wheel when someone's already done it. But on the other hand, I really do recommend you find your own path on what you see is fit to do, especially when you try to replicate Gundam. again, kind of save yourself some trouble. I would recommend some of what I've already published for my NOAA project. You're more than welcome to look at that and try to use that as source material for your own settings. I only ask that you use to give credit to what sources you borrow from, or what sources I borrowed from. Just kind of give recognition where it's due. But anyway, Gundam is a great series. It's been around for over 40 years, and it still seems to have a lot of staying power. The Universal Century timeline kind of serves as a framework for the other multiverses, and sometimes you can find a lot of answers just by looking at that. If you try to work out seed, you can look at the Universal Century and kind of get a good basis off that, or even wing or whatever. But anyway, I think I'm actually starting to fall asleep for once. I hope that this has been useful to you. If you have any questions, leave some comments down below, or send me a direct message. I'll try to be as helpful as I can. I'll also try to include what links I used here to so that you can read the material yourself. And as usual, I'll try to have links to the Mekton Zeta archive that I maintain as well. But anyway, this is Kudos Slayer calling it quits, and hope this has been informative. Catch you all in the next episode. And if I don't see you by then, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Bye.